Well, hello to everybody who has joined us, and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Burst and Cascade. And the title is 3 Ways to Slash Your Storage Costs. My name is Kevin Durman. I'm the CEO of Cascade. And joining us today are Russell Warren, who's our CTO of Cascade, and Jeff Johnson, who is the Head of Product Marketing for Burst. And welcome, Jeff. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's great to have you with us, and we really look forward to going through everything and going through this topic of how to reduce storage costs. And it's very much a topic that is on the top of every CTO, CIO, IT manager's mind. Never before have we created so much data than we are at the moment. In fact, I think more data has been generated in the last 2 years than the entire human history before that. So we are really creating these vast amounts of data, and it's kind of a datafication that we're going through, where everything that we are doing, whether if you even look at the consumer level, where somebody is wearing a watch, and that watch is monitoring heart rate, it's monitoring the amount of steps that we do. And this is all generating to the amount of data that we generate. It's called one's digital exhaust, and we have I really like that concept of each human being walking around generating all of these bits and bytes that have to be stored somewhere. But then at the company level, it's also massive, and there's so much business that is being driven by data. Every minute, 300 new hours of video show up on YouTube. That's 300 hours per minute, and they've got over more than 1 billion gigabytes of storage on their servers alone. And currently in 2020, the beginning of the year, the digital universe was estimated to be around about 44 zettabytes of data. And they say by 2025 that approximately 463 exabytes would be created every 24 hours worldwide. So taking all of these stats into consideration, you can see that if you're going to have to continue paying large fees for the storage of this data, and you're not managing how it is being stored and managing the archiving of it, that companies are set for an exponential curve of their data costs. And hence our webinar today, which is really about how do you slash these storage costs, how do you reduce them, and in doing so also increase your performance, because you don't want to reduce your costs and have lower performance. So we're very excited to have you with us, Jeff, and to hear about that. Just a reminder for those of you who haven't met Cascade before, and to go through, I'm going to let Russell just chat a bit about the kind of things that we do.
Thanks, Kevin. I was tempted to say, well, I'll send you to our YouTube channel, but after hearing about how much additional video is being created, I wouldn't want to have people take up more of their time. They've still got 300 hours per minute to get through, right? So lots of videos to get through there. Yes, so Cascade, as it says, we're a focused cloud services provider. We have something for everyone. I think maybe that is some of the point of this webinar as well, is that when you're utilizing a cloud service, irrespective of the platform, often you'll set something up and leave it, not giving too much consideration to what future costs may be, and to what setup changes you might be able to make, and so on. And a large part of our practice with our clients is managing those costs, and so we see lots of examples of this. Storage is actually a good example. A lot of people only think of a couple of the options that are available to them, and very seldom do they look outside of that as well. So you'll see that for enterprises, cost optimization and management is actually something that's extremely relevant to them, especially as they scale in their cloud operations. And we really focus on a lot of handling a lot of things like the management of alignment with best practices and those sorts of things. And we provide skills really across all types of companies when it comes to utilizing advanced technology, as well as getting projects going on AWS. And we do have a special place for startups. Everyone was a startup at some point, and so we like to assist those companies in becoming the next Netflix, I suppose. Some certainly do have that potential. And yeah, so thank you very much. Really looking forward to this one. And I think I shall now hand over to Jeff.
That's fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we've got it. Great.
So it's a good thing my wife's not on the phone, because she thinks the South African accent is the, I'll just say, best accent in the world. She's like, Jeff, why won't you learn?
She's a very wise woman.
Yeah. It's like, please, Jeff, learn that accent. I'm like, okay, Bruce. That's all I got.
Pretty good.
It's so good. It's so good to be here with Cascade Cloud. I don't want to repeat everything that was just said, but it was so poignant on how much data is being generated. And one of the things we love to say is, if data is doubling every year, and if your IT budget isn't doubling every year, when will you not be able to afford your own data? If we're generating this much data, right? So it's timely, it's important, it's a conversation that we must have, and we need to do our due diligence at every step of our job, and cost cutting is just one of them. So at Burst, we were a company called SoftNAS, but SoftNAS is our product. We're coming out with some other products. We changed our name. We renamed our company to Burst with two U's. But we are a data performance company, a migration company, cost control. We're going to talk about cost today mostly, data availability, data control, and security. We are trusted. Their data is trusted by our SoftNAS application by some pretty big global companies around the world. And we respect and honor their usage of our product, and we don't take that lightly, because data is the DNA of any company, and if we lose that data, that's a very, very bad thing. So what we're going to talk about is how to avoid these pitfalls and traps and storage vendors, how they drive revenue, how to prevent being charged for your storage you don't need, and how to reduce that data footprint. This is what we'll be talking about today. What we talked about earlier, and I'll just blast through this, 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years. Data is doubling every year. When are you not going to be able to afford your data? Today, IT budgets, we're seeing data centers closing. We're seeing leveraging cloud economics. So there's lots of reasons why data centers are closing, but you have to know that AWS can run a data center more efficiently than you ever can. You just have to think that. So we need to save money at every level. So what we're saying is, it's your time to be the IT hero. And I understand that a lot of the things that are in the cloud today in South Africa, they might be in Dublin, but they are, because of mandates, they're going to be moving into country. So it's a really great time to understand that migration, understand the economics around moving that data, and how to do that most efficiently, and how to do that most cost savings. So we're going to talk about reducing cost by optimizing the data, reducing the acquisition of the data, so the TCA, and reducing the cost of performance. Let's get in there. So optimizing data. So we call this data efficacy in the cloud. So when you have your data and your application on premises, you have a certain level of performance and you have a certain level of cost, and you need more storage, and you just go buy another hard drive and you put in your data center. And that's cool, and that works out really well, and it's relatively inexpensive these days. But when you talk about cloud storage management, now we're talking about every gigabyte you enter, like on the States. And the numbers I'm going to give today are all on US West zones of the clouds. but you pay about 30 cents per gigabyte. And you don't really think about that when you're in the on-premises. And you think about, well, I have all these tools and capabilities in my data center, and aren't those same tools and capabilities available to me in the cloud? Well, not necessarily. The first one we take a look at that we kind of take for granted, because in your data center, you're going to have a SAN or a NAS. You're going to have some kind of a data management layer, and you probably have deduplication. Not all cloud vendors for storage have deduplication as a feature or capability that they present to you. So if you think about this, if the stats are, in most cases with our customers' data set, we can reduce that data by 20 to 30%. So right there, that's a reduction in your Azure or your AWS bill, if 20 to 30%. Okay, so next is compression. So compression, we've all zipped files, we've all done, all that, but having that available at your NAS, at your cloud storage level, we've been able to reduce most customers' data by 50 to 75%. Again, that's 55 to 75% off of your AWS bill, because we are talking about per gigabyte. We think about this in SQL, web apps, Office documents. It's done as the data it's compressed as the data is sitting there and available, and then it just stays there until you request it and opens it up for you. And this is the one I'm kind of most excited about, data tiering. So data tiering, we can put, if we wanted really, really fast access to our data, we could put our tier 1 storage like in NVMe, which gives us the absolute fastest, reads and writes. But when I read it, I can pull it out of my tier 2 storage or my tier 3 storage, and then when I write it again or change it, it'll go into tier 1 storage, and then off of aging policy, it will start moving that data back over to, maybe it's from SSD to HDD to cold storage. And what we're seeing here is this a 67% decrease in cost, because we're just automatically moving that storage further back, and about 80% of the data is rarely used past 90 days. So we can adjust these aging policies so it really meets the needs of your customers or your clients. And this also gives us the ability to speed up the call, because if you're tier 1, let's say it's SSD, tier 2 is HDD, tier 3 is cold. If we move that up to SSD, because also everyone's using it now, well, now I'm pulling that out from SSD storage all the time and using that actively until I stop using it. And what's really interesting with this is when we put all three of these together, and this is not crazy voodoo magic. This is just spreadsheet kind of stuff. So we could reduce your storage costs by 80% if we took a $5,000 a month, 50 terabyte storage bill, and we deduped it just 20%. And then we got $44,000 a month US. And then we compress that 50%. Now we got $22,000 a month. And then we tiered that. Now we have $1,000 a month. And this is just real numbers, and this is how it works. And we're really proud of the work of our development team to kind of put all these together into this seamless solution. So if we think about this, and we think about the offerings that are out there, dedupe, compression, and tiering, EFS, Elastic File System, they do have tiering. And FSX, it has deduplication. So there are still some benefits to using like the EFS or FSX, but to get all three of those with the largest amount of reduction in your storage costs, the dedupe, compression, and tiering just works really well and seamlessly. Well, let's move over to total cost of acquisition. I think this one's really Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, just before you go off
Yeah.
that past slide, if you can go back one, so the typical customer out there, from our experience, when they start on their cloud journey and they start putting data into the cloud, they don't worry about doing dedupe and compression and tiering. So would you say that it's a fair comment to say that before they know it, their storage costs have got out of hand, and generally they can take advantage of all three of these, and should they take advantage of all three at the same time, or should they do some first?
So I believe that compression is turned on SoftNAS, turned on automatically. Like you have to, that's default.
Right.
Yeah, so the tiering has to be set up. So if all the data is out there straight away, then you have to go out and configure it, right? This doesn't really take like a POC to do. Like, what will happen if I turn all these on together? It's either like compression, like a lot of audio files or video or pictures, they're already compressed. You're not going to get a lot of compression out of that. So you can still turn it on and it's not going to really do much to it. I think what I'm really trying to say is there's very low risk to turning this on straight away without doing due diligence, because all of our customers for the last quite a few years on AWS have been using these capabilities for a long time. These are not beta type
So customers should go for it and maximize, reduce those costs to the max first time off. Don't do it in stages.
Yeah, and in a little bit here, we're going to talk about like high availability. So, if I just have all this data and dedupe, compression, and tiering all on just one set, I still need to do my due diligence around, archiving my information, backing up my information, or putting it in a high availability configuration. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, awesome, thanks. So, total cost of acquisition. This is really where we get into in just a straight math. I like to separate this argument, let's say, between self-managed storage, I'm going to manage it myself, or managed storage service like EFS or FSX. They're going to manage it for me, and I'm going to pay them a little bit more to manage it for me, because maybe one of the reasons why I go to the cloud is I don't want to manage this stuff anymore. Okay, well, let's dive into that a little bit. So if you have to self-manage your data in the cloud like you do today in the data center, obviously you're going to migrate that data, you are going to mount it, grow it, you're going to share it, secure it, back it up, recover it, make it highly available, you're going to optimize it, you're going to be tiering it. If you use a managed storage service like EFS or FSX from AWS, you are still going to have to migrate it, you are going to have to mount it, they grow it for you. That's awesome, don't have to worry about that. You're going to have to share it, you're going to have to secure it, they're going to back it up, you're going to recover it, and they're going to make it highly available, and you're going to optimize it, and they're going to tier it. I mean, that's just what you do. You have to have some capability, some responsibility into this venture with your cloud provider. That just kind of makes sense. But you're going to pay a little premium for the things that they do. So again, these are U.S. numbers, and the South African and Dublin numbers are a little bit different. So we use block storage. Block storage for SSD is about 10 cents per gig. For HDD, it's 4 cents, 4.5. For archiving, it's 2.5 cents. Now, if we're taking a look at managed storage service like EFS, it's 30 cents for SSD in the US, and again, it's the same price for the archiving, that 2.5 cents. So there is a difference right there, but I do have an overhead. So my cloud NAS has an overhead that they do not have, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But so for 3 times the price, I still have to secure it, migrate it, mount it, share it, recover it, optimize it. So it is what it is. We love Amazon Web Services, but it just the things that they do and the things that I do. So if we really take a look at this at like a performance or an access model for this managed storage, we have to understand that this is a shared access model. So EFS, the protocol that a VM, that your Linux machine will use to connect up into the Amazon or AWS EFS, is network file system, EFS. That's the native. Now a Windows VM could also now, because they have POSIX support, add NFS support, so they can do that, but it's not really the default protocol. They want to use CIFS or SMB, and that's the same with Azure Files. But you're in contention with every other company to access that storage. It's a shared access model, so that's why they throttle. That's why the providers on a shared access model, they throttle your bandwidth or your throughput to your storage so that another company isn't hogging or capitalizing, or we call it being a noisy neighbor to the bandwidth. So you're throttled. You might get inconsistent performance. And then if you get charged extra if you're bursting, and you could pay more for provision throughput. And that's kind of where it's interesting, because once you pay more for provision throughput, what was happening is a cloud NAS was actually a little bit more expensive on data sets less than 4 terabytes. But data sets less than 4 terabytes, the throughput that you're getting is less than 200 megabits per second, and that's not very scalable for a few clients. And that's and with the inconsistent performance, and then it just gets a little wonky. So then you pay for more throughput, and then all of a sudden now we're cheaper for the same throughput under 4 terabytes, which is kind of interesting. So we also have the scalability and stability and security is the benefits that you get with the managed storage. So what else could you do? Well, if I have a company VM, I could just attach block storage to that VM, and I'm going to get consistent storage. I'm going to have a dedicated access to storage, but hopefully I don't date myself here. This is back like when we had the ProLiant servers in our data center. Do you remember Kevin, you remember those ProLiant servers in the data center? And we'd crack open the case and add more storage to those boxes, and then we would, seal it back up and put it back in the data centers. Remember that?
Indeed.
And it wasn't very scalable, right? I mean, so what did we do? We sold a NAS to have that data management layer in between the server and the storage. So you could do that, and you'll have the same experience that you had, because you have to down the server, add storage, change storage, bring the server back up, and there goes your SLAs for uptime. So what we're talking about here with a NAS is put a NAS in the middle between the block storage and the VMs. These are the VMs only owned by the company, and that NAS then can have NFS, iSCSI, which is very important in CIFS. A lot of our customers, just because we support iSCSI, is one of the main reasons they use us, because they're trying to migrate a legacy line of business application from their data center, and that uses iSCSI to the backend storage, because they do a lot of SQL block level transmits back and forth, and that has been the most efficient, scalable protocol that they've used. And if they move that without iSCSI support, they'd have to kind of rewrite their application. They'd have to make some drastic changes and bring in DevOps. But without doing iSCSI support, we can just kind of lift and shift and bring that application over, virtualize that machine, or if it's already virtualized, bring the data over, and then just reattach it with iSCSI, and then it's working. We can also put this NAS in a high availability. So what we're doing here is that same NAS, we have a primary and a secondary NAS. So when the primary is always working and it's copying and it's we're changing information on my block storage, my primary site, and then I'm replicating data, the same data, over to my secondary site. And if I lose an availability zone, like an AWS, I can fail over to the secondary SoftNAS and keep going. It's usually about a minute failover, which usually fits in my SLAs. This doesn't happen. I mean, it's rarely. This is just extreme dangers. You know, think something really bad happened at the data center, the cloud data center. But this has been very, very successful. And when we take a look at, you know, you're like going, well, Jeff, Kevin, this is 2 SoftNASes. This is double the storage. You just told me that storage is really expensive, and now you're doubling the storage. Okay, just hang on 1 second here. If we take a look at the raw numbers here, the EBS, my block storage, is 10 cents per gig, and the EFS storage is about 30 cents US per gig. And obviously, that number will, the savings will greatly, the more data put on there, the more savings I have. But what we're actually looking at here is with 2 SoftNASes and the overhead and the costs associated with 2 SoftNAS, the double the storage, I'm still very, very much cheaper than just using EFS. Now we love at Burst, at SoftNAS, we love AWS, huge partner of ours. But there are some really great reasons to use straight up EFS, and there's some really great reasons to use a NAS in between. So we can get the dedupe and compression, we can get the tiering, we can get, you know, all of the cost saving features in there in a highly available solution. And what we're seeing here is we have a SoftNAS 200 to 400 and 800. We also have a 1600 as we're going up in speed with more RAM, more CPU, more throughput. That's why the numbers increase between the 200 and the 800. So we talked about reducing total cost of acquisition, going from 30 cents to 10 cents, and being able to actually really, you know, optimize that use of that 10 cents EBS storage. But what about the cost of performance? You know, some customers, Kevin, you probably agree. It's like the cost for performance. It doesn't even come into play because I have to have the performance almost at any cost.
Correct. I think that's one of the big considerations for companies is they do not want to, nobody wants to decrease performance as they
nobody wants to
need
decrease
more storage. Yeah.
And unfortunately, when you go to the cloud, you know, sometimes you're looking at this decrease of performance. We think that's unacceptable. But there's that. You know, how do we increase performance and decrease cost? Now that'd be a value proposition right there, wouldn't it? That'd be amazing. All right, let's talk about that. So attached storage, we kind of talked about this a little bit versus shared storage. So remember earlier we talked about these VMs on my left-hand side. They directly connect to my SoftNAS, my cloud NAS, and that directly connects to my storage. So that's all one company working together. With EFS, all the companies are kind of in contention with the EFS storage. And I was thinking about this as I was working from home recently, and I'm thinking, you know, it's kind of like me on my own computer versus me having to drive to the office and have inconsistent traffic patterns to get to my computer in the office. Like some days it's really fast, some days it's really slow, some days there's an accident. It's like, you know, do I want that predictable speed, and do I want to increase my speed, or do I just go along with the traffic? So these are numbers straight out of EFS website, AWS website. They increase performance through increasing the capacity. So on this chart here, if you have 10 gigabytes of data, you'll have 0.5 megabytes of throughput. And if you have 1 terabyte of data, you'll have 50 megabytes of throughput. This is what I was talking about earlier. My computer at home here, I get about, with SSD, I get about 400 megabytes per second. And that's just me, working it. And so if I get up to 4 terabytes of data, I get 200 megabytes per second. Now, I can pay for provision throughput. So if I pay for, I think the numbers I was working out on the calculator on the AWS side, if I pay for 400 megabytes provision throughput, that's what I want. The cost was around 2,700 US, 2,700 US. So if I have 10 gigabytes of data and I want 400 megabytes of throughput, that's $2,700. And if I have 4 terabytes of data and I want 400 megabytes of throughput, that's also $2,700. Because they're charging you as to like, well, at about 8 terabytes is 400 gigabytes. So they're really just charging you for the extra terabytes that you're not using. And a lot of customers, if you look online, a lot of web developers or DevOps people, what they'll do is if they need a certain amount of throughput or throughput, megabits or megabytes, excuse me, they'll put dummy data up on the EFS storage, so they're getting the performance they need.
So is this what Burst refers to as storage tax? Is this the concept of storage tax?
Yeah, it's like I need a certain amount of performance, and I should be able to pay for performance, not pay for extra storage.
The actual space to get the performance, right?
Yes, exactly. So what we do is we have performance levels, 2, 4, 6, 8, 1,600, 3,200, 6,400. There's a price per hour for that, and then there's a throughput level. And if you see our 800 is 265, and then our 1,600 has 500. So we actually just did a performance analysis, and maybe I'll pitch for our next webinars. We'll do a very specific performance webinar and dive deeper into these numbers with some benchmarking that we just completed. But what we're saying here is, look at pay for your performance, understand what your throughput requirements are, and then we don't charge for storage. You pay AWS for storage. You don't pay Burst for storage. Some of my competitors, this is the only time I'll talk about my cloud storage competitors, you pay for storage through the cloud competitor, but then you pay for storage back to AWS, and we don't think that's right either. So to understand the performance that you need, determine the performance you need, and then attach as much storage as you want. That is a way to control costs, we believe. So when we're reducing the cost of performance, we really, having a NAS deliver the storage is cost effective. Now, it was more cost effective. We thought it was more cost effective above 4 terabytes, but really when we're diving down into our performance statistics that we just completed, or benchmarking, that you'd have to pay for the provisioned throughput to get kind of the performance level that we are offering. So really we're cheaper on almost every level when we talk about cost and performance. And one of the reasons why we can do that, if you think about this, that NAS can have caching involved on it. That NAS has the CPU, the RAM, the network speed that's really controlling that user experience or the cloud application experience. So reducing cost for performance, use attached storage, use RAID configuration, obviously, use read and write cache. We just talked about it a little bit. And the more RAM, what we do is, so for read cache, if 80% of my, statistically, is 80% of my interaction with my data set is reading, 20% is writing, the more RAM I have on my NAS, I take half of that RAM that's available or that's on that machine, and I associate that with cache. So if someone opened that file, then I open that file, it's going to come straight from RAM. There's no way faster I can be than pulling that out of RAM. So we'll talk about that our next webinar. So 3 ways to slash that cloud storage cost. Like, we optimize my storage. Number 1, optimize your storage. Use dedupe, compression, and tiering together. This is just math on how it works, right? It was $5,000 a month, and now it's $1,000 a month. Make less expensive storage work for you. So what I mean for that is using HDD storage with a NAS, or using block storage rather than the EFS storage. It makes a lot of sense. And then obviously, like with tiering, we can use HDD and SSD and cold all working together. And then I could reduce my costs for performance, like pay for the performance, not for more storage to get the performance. And this, I think this is really key when we're trying to build that or to migrate that application into the cloud. It's really important for us to understand the performance characteristics of my application and which protocol I should use, iSCSI, NFS, or CIFS, and then understand what are the requirements that my users need. Because don't you hate when you get like on a call center and the call center agent's like, oh, excuse me, my application's running slow right now. That's just not acceptable. We could be better than that. So to wrap up here, for cost, dedupe, compression, tiering, low storage performance. For high availability, we do offer a 5.9 SLA uptime guarantee. Cross-region replication, availability zones, HA, and the protocols. And these are really important. We're evaluating. And so what's interesting is we can do a free trial on AWS, but I think what's one of the most important things is working with a partner on this. I'm going to turn this back over to Kevin, because it's when we're migrating from Dublin back into South Africa, there's going to be lots of design considerations. Migrating from the data center up into the cloud, tons of design considerations. Working with a partner is probably one of the most critical aspects of all this, and not just time savings, money savings.
Yeah, and thank you, Jeff. I think one of the things that we really would like to invite anybody listening to this webinar to do is to get in touch with us so we can discuss your unique scenario. Every customer has a different way of handling their data and the amount of data and the use case that's around that. So we would really welcome the opportunity to guide you through it, to set up that POC for you and just show you how well this solution works. I know that Russell has a few comments that he wanted to ask.
I've actually just picked up a couple of questions that have come through. So I thought to ask some of them, I'll just repackage. They're sometimes asking the same thing. One of them is really around tiering. And I know that when we were initially sort of looking at SoftNAS, the burst product SoftNAS is one of the things we looked at, is to say, when you talk about tiering, you talk about going down to cold storage. People often think about that as Glacier or S3, as in, you're going to have to wait a while to get it back, or you're going to have to put a file system on top of it. Do you want to maybe explain in that question, for this example, what is the cold storage in that tier? What does that look like?
Well, I don't have to use cold storage. I can just use SSD and HDD. I could stop at tier 2 if I wanted to, but I can go to cold storage with this. And with AWS EFS, they do charge you when you're pulling it out of cold storage or putting it into cold storage. They kind of want it to stay there. The performance, we're not doing that. We just have that cold storage tier, slow moving hard drives, and it just it pulls it back. There's more delay than using just HDD, but it's really not bad at all, and it's acceptable performance. It just kind of depends on like literally, I don't have to use cold storage. I don't have to use tier 3. I just get the best cost savings with tier 3.
Right, and it's you know, a lot of the time application support does require that. So you sometimes are just left with a pointer or a stub, something like that, to where the data should reside. And you know, if you're trying to put it into long-term cold storage on other systems, you know, you're not going to get that back. It's no longer the same. You're going to have to, you know, first restore it and do some translations. So
That's right.
So definitely some advantage to be able to have that additional cold storage and a lot of control. That's one of the things I think I picked up as a benefit is a lot of the time, you very correctly pointed out, it's great to be able to say, wow, this service is hands off. I can just let it run and let it go. And that's great. But there are points in clients' journeys or related to their applications and particular use cases where a little more control is required. Certainly great to be able to still deliver the benefits, but retain the control and the right sort of controls. You know, so some people want to see the lights on their servers. I think we're all long past that, right? So
some people made a lot of money by selling devices with blinking lights.
I'm often teasing some of the other engineers in our group when they have to go through to a data center and they say it's really cold. I'll say, you know, well, stop going to data centers and you can stop buying jerseys. So that's a starting point, but certainly control is needed in a few cases. And then just sort of any comments on the caching side of things? I see another question came through around caching.
Yeah.
Just asking a little bit about that. It wasn't, I think it's just a general sort of question, so I won't repeat it exactly, but are there any differences in the way the caching works between these systems, EFS and?
Yeah, with EFS, you know, I've been searching through the documentation on caching with EFS, and there's got to be some level of caching. But if you think about it, if I'm sharing my storage with 1,000 other customers, whatever cache is going to be there is going to be used by a different customer. I mean, they have the security so that another customer can't get a hold of my data. I'm very confident on that. You know, EFS and Amazon, they're just amazing on security. I'm very confident that no one else can get to my data. That's fine, but I do share that pipe. I share the access. So if I read something, it goes into cache, and then the company next to me reads something, it goes into cache, and there's only so much room for cache. So that's going to get used up. It's going to get used, right? So what's interesting with this is, when you're using a NAS, so let's say on this picture here, I have 2 block storages, and those are, let's say they're 2 separate volumes, and maybe I even have tiering on each one of those light blue block storage, you know, objects. I can set up different cache for different volumes. So I have, you know, that's level 2 cache. So maybe I have an NVMe disk that the block storage on the left-hand side is more important than the block storage that's on the right-hand side. And I can say, I want this NVMe disk to handle the L2 cache for that LUN, for that block storage calls. And I could put, you know, if it depends on, you know, price and performance, I could put a terabyte, let's say, of NVMe for that block storage. But then the other block storage on the right-hand side, maybe I just want that to use a level 1 cache that's in the RAM of the SoftNAS VM. I mean, this is one of the most shocking things that I've run into lately with regarding performance is just this caching and being able to dictate which volume has that cache, either level 1 or level 2 cache.
Right. Okay. Sometimes perhaps the caching where there's no control over it, you know, could be handled on the client side, so on the requester. So in that case, you might see an increase in requirement for memory or even CPU cycles.
Yeah. What I did see that is like and thank you for reminding me that there was one article that they had to say, like, if this AWS EFS with NFS, you can adjust on each one of the clients the caching that's that's needed. But that's a client-side cache. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Excellent. Right. I don't see any more questions coming through. I think that sums up.
Great. Well, Jeff, thank you. That was really a great presentation, and it's so good to see those different opportunities there are that are available to reduce your cloud costs. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to just put the contact details up on the screen for Cascade and the various ways that you can get hold of us. So in just a moment.
You know, and you know, Kevin, and working with your company, it's really fun, and there's a low cost of entry just to get a hold of you and us to do demos and to do, you know, these are just conversations that we're having at that point, right?
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. So there's our information there. You can go to our website, or you can just email us at info@KASKADE.CLOUD, or you can just call the number, and we would be glad to just speak about your unique scenario for your company, and what are the kind of storage issues and hassles that you have, and show you how you can reduce those costs. And why not? Everybody is looking for a way to get more out of their current environments, and reducing your storage costs is a great way to do it. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jeff, again. And everybody, wishing you a great day.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers. Yeah, we are off. Okay.
There we go.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Thanks so much.